A very good evening and welcome to the news tonight, where we get you the day's top developing stories within the next 30 minutes from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilchi and here are the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches 3 mega urban schemes. Government to aim at providing 2 crore houses by 2022. Parties launch protests, mounting pressure on BJP to remove Vasundhara Raje as the Rajasthan Chief Minister. The BJP, though, remains defiant. Monsoon rains create havoc across the country. Flood alerts are issued in many states. Sushma Swaraj conveys India's disappointment to her Chinese counterpart on blocking of the UN action against Pakistan for Lakhvi's release. Pakistan, though, blames India for politicizing the issue. And time is soon running out for Greece. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras resumes talks with international creditors to find a solution to the debt crisis. The top story, the NDA government launched 3 mega urban schemes today: the Smart Cities Mission, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, and Housing for All. Launching the schemes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that these schemes are aimed at urban transformation and stressed on the need for people-centric urban planning. Here are more details.
Unveiling 3 mega flagship urban schemes of his government, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said urbanization should be viewed as an opportunity and urban centers should be viewed as growth engines. He also stressed on the need for providing houses for urban poor.
हमारी कोशिश ये है सिर्फ मकान देना, यानी एक परिवार को जो कि बेघर है वो घर वाला बने, इतना नहीं, उसको जीवन जीने की हैसियत देना, उसके मन में जीवन जीने का उमंग भरना, उसके जीवन में जीवन को साकार होने का आनंद देखने को मिले और आने वाली पीढ़ियों को देने का उसका सपना पूरा हो, ऐसा एक माहौल बनाने का इरादा है.
Pointing to a transparent system, the Prime Minister said smart cities will be selected through a competition among cities.
पहली बार हिंदुस्तान में चैलेंज रूट के आधार पर स्मार्ट सिटी बनाने का निर्णय किया है. दुनिया के कई देशों ने ये प्रयोग किया है. कुछ पैरामीटर तय किए और जो शहर इस पैरामीटर को पूर्ति करेगा वो एंट्री पाएगा स्पर्धा में. फिर उसकी दूसरी एग्जाम देनी पड़ेगी, उसको पार करेगा तो सिलेक्ट होगा. जब सिलेक्ट होगा तो फिर भारत सरकार, राज्य सरकार मिल करके उस शहर की ताकत में साथ जोड़ करके उसको स्मार्ट सिटी बनाने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ेंगे.
Urban Development Minister Venkaiah Naidu, who was also present on the occasion, said states will have full liberty and flexibility in designing and implementation of these schemes.
We have completely done away with the subjectivity in sanctioning the projects and funds for the states. Under the 3 missions, selection of cities and allocation of funds will be based on objective and equitable criteria for giving equal weightage to urban population in each state and the number of statutory cities and towns.
While 500 cities will be developed under Amrut scheme, there would be 100 smart cities over 5 years, and Housing for All aims construction of 2 crore houses in urban areas in the next 7 years. Vishal Dahiya, Rajya Sabha TV, Delhi.
In other news, Prime Minister Modi attacked the Congress party today on the 40th anniversary of the imposition of emergency in the country. Describing the emergency period as one of the darkest in the nation's history, Modi said the lust for power led to trampling over democracy. Here's more.
On the 40th anniversary of the emergency, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a veiled attack on the Congress. Calling it one of India's darkest periods, Modi said in a tweet, "Nobody can forget June 25th and 26th in the history of India. 40 years back, the country was bound with the chains of emergency and turned into a jail for the lust of power."
हिंदुस्तान के इतिहास में 25-26 जून कोई भूल नहीं सकता है. 40 साल पहले सत्ता सुख के खातिर देश को आपातकाल के बंधनों में बांध करके जेल खाना बना दिया गया था।
The Prime Minister reminded that a vibrant liberal democracy is the key to progress. He reiterated that everything should be done to strengthen democratic ideals and ethos. The Congress, however, questioned the timing and tenor of the remarks, stating they were an attempt to divert attention from other issues.
आज तो अनडिक्लेयर्ड इमरजेंसी है भारत के अंदर, सत्ता का केंद्रीयकरण है, ये ध्यान हटाने के लिए आज ये चर्चा में लाए। अगर वो एक काला अध्याय था, अगर प्रधानमंत्री ने ये शब्द इस्तेमाल किए हैं, मैं उसको दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण कहूंगा। पर उसके बाद कई काले दिन भारत ने देखे हैं। हमने गुजरात के दंगों के काले दिन भी देखे हैं।
Emergency was declared on 25th June 1975 and ended on March 21st, 1977. The period was characterized by suppression of civil liberties and arrest of key political leaders who opposed then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's action.
There was ban on newspapers. There was ban on political activities. There was surveillance. People's freedom and democratic right was severely carved. Most of the people were very unhappy, very unhappy.
पहले पार्लियामेंट फैसला करती थी, अब वो खुद करती थी। जहाँ पे और इंस्टीट्यूशंस थी वो भी ख़त्म हो गई। तो उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि इमरजेंसी का मतलब 1% रूल हो गया, वो मिसेस गांधी और फिर जो एक उनका लड़का संजय गांधी उसने उसके साथ।
On Wednesday, a cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister decided to set up a national memorial for Jai Prakash Narayan, who led the protest against emergency. The Prime Minister said the memorial will be an inspiration to democracy-loving citizens of the country. Vishal Dahiya, Rajya Sabha TV, Delhi.
Right, another news. The AAP government has allotted the lion's share to education in its first budget for the national capital. Out of a 41,000 crore rupees budget, Kejriwal's government has set aside nearly 1/4 of it, a rise of over 100% than last time. It plans to develop 50 model schools and specially trained teachers, besides making them more accountable. It is also planning a skill university to make Delhi into a knowledge and skill hub. Besides education, 50 crores has been allotted for a Wi-Fi infrastructure in the city, which was a major poll promise of the Aam Aadmi Party. The government has announced 4,787 crore rupees allotted to the health sector, which is with a plan, in fact, to construct 100 new hospitals in the capital. 5,908 crores has been set aside for municipal corporations, while 1,690 crores has been allocated for subsidy on water and electricity.
ये आम आदमी का बजट है। जिन उम्मीदों को, जिन आशाओं को लेकर, जिन सपनों को लेकर दिल्ली के लोगों ने आम आदमी पार्टी को वोट दिया था, ये बजट उनकी उन उम्मीदों को साकार करने की कोशिश करता है।
हमारा यही कहना है कि महंगाई देने वाला बजट है और ज़बरदस्त महंगाई दिल्ली के लोगों को भुगतनी पड़ेगी, जिसमें जो नया कमर्शियल चार्जेस लगाए हैं, एंट्री चार्जेस लगाए हैं, उसके कारण दिल्ली में जो सामान आता है खाने पीने का और लोगों की सुविधाओं के लिए और गरीब लोगों के लिए, वो हर चीज़ महंगी होने वाली है।
In every respect, there is no new infrastructure scheme in this budget. There is nothing new in this budget. And if you look at the unauthorized colonies, the slums, the poor section of our society who live in Delhi in large number, who were mainly responsible to bring this Aam Aadmi Party into power, they have done nothing. Rather, they have reduced budgets in all of their heads. And I think that this budget is a fictitious budget.
All right, but staying with education in Delhi, admissions in Delhi University for its undergraduate courses has once again touched the 100% cutoff mark. Two colleges, Indraprastha College for Women and College of Vocational Studies, have demanded the perfect score for BSc Computer Science course. In several colleges, the eligibility bar set for certain categories of students, though, have gone beyond 100%. For instance, a candidate without economics in class 12th would need to have a score of 100.75% in the best of 4 subjects to secure a seat in economics at SRCC or Hansraj College. At Lady Shri Ram College, an aspirant needs to have an aggregate score of 100.5% to get admission for psychology honours if she hasn't studied the subject at the senior secondary level. All right, for more on this, we're joined this evening by Gunjan Sharma, who's a journalist with PTI in studio this evening. Gunjan, thanks so much for joining us. First reaction, of course, of us, who are a little away from the education sector is, what is happening? Is this for real?
Exactly. That is what students are also claiming, that this is unbelievable, this is absurd. Delhi University, which has exactly been facing certain criticism all over these years because of the 100% cutoffs. But this year, it seems like when you look at the cutoff, it's like only 2 colleges have come out with 100% cutoffs, but there are certain hidden eligibility criteria which probably students, when they were appearing for their board exams, were not even aware of. Who would know that the cutoffs would exactly cross the 100% mark? How can a student exactly score like something which is called as 100.75%? What is that exactly, that criteria?
Exactly.
So the students are in for a big shock. We have been interacting with certain students who have called this like unbelievable, which is, as I said, absurd also.
Absolutely. But then, I was just looking into how universities, colleges, in fact, decide on their cutoffs. And, I came across some reports which stated that factors such as the total number of applicants scoring above certain percentage, the popularity of a certain course, that, of course, also propels universities to, go ahead with a 0.5 to a 1% hike in those cutoff rates. So definitely it also is a scene of change that we're seeing among students as well on how much they're scoring in their 12th board exams.
Exactly. That is what, of all the principals and the university officials we have been interacting, that is what has come out, is that it's ultimately the boards which are to be blamed for these high cutoffs. The colleges do not really have much choices since the number of seats are limited. And if the number of students applying is it's like 4 times, 5 times, and there are so many students who are securing like something which is 95%, 97%, so they really do not have much of choice except then marking a ceiling for them to make it a perfect 100 or say 99%. But the only thing is that I think this is what CBSE needs to realize, that the marking, or not exactly just CBSE, that the marking for our 12th boards need to be more realistic, and it needs to be more exactly not very strict, I would say, but then we need to work on our parameters that we are judging upon. Similarly, if we compare like student who is coming from Bihar board or student who is coming from Haryana board, where the marking is comparatively much strict, the students are bound to lose out on the seats in Delhi University, where a student who has passed out of the CBSE board might easily secure a seat here just because he passed out from that particular board. So CBSE needs to really work out on its parameters that we are judging students upon, just in this league of not putting too much of burden on our students. On one hand, we say that we should not be promoting rote learning and
competition in
something which should not be really based on marks, and marks are not the real indicators. If marks are really not the indicators, then what are the students struggling for? What are the 100% cutoffs about if marks are not the real indicators? So there are certain loopholes that we need to work out in terms of our marking patterns. Of course, increasing the number of seats would also lead to a solution of this problem, but that is a long way to go, and there are so many hassles and so many procedures which need to be followed before sanctioning more number of seats. There needs to be infrastructure, there needs to be faculty, much more.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Gunjan, thanks so much for joining us. All I can say is thank God we passed out years back, isn't it?
That's
all right, thank you so much for joining us. Meanwhile, staying with the capital, Delhi witnessed a rain-soaked day today. Temperatures dropped several notches below the season's average. But away from the national capital, a flood-like situation is developing in several states like Jammu and Kashmir and Gujarat. Assam, in fact, is already reeling under massive floods with several thousand people being displaced. Take a look.
Heavy rain since Wednesday triggered a flood-like situation in the Kashmir Valley. The Jhelum flowed above the danger mark, prompting authorities to issue a flood alert.
जो हमारा संगम है वो उसका गेज है 27 और श्रीनगर में है 20 फुट। तो हमने कल फ्लड अलर्ट किया था, मगर चूंकि इस वक्त जो सुबह से बारिश बंद हो गई है हमारे ट्रिब्यूटरीज में भी और बाकी जगह में भी, तो अभी जो संगम है वो अब हम स्टेबल हो गया है। तो श्रीनगर में अभी थोड़ी 2-3 घंटे थोड़ा ये बढ़ ही जाएगा, मगर अल्टीमेटली अंडर कंट्रोल है सारा।
Hundreds of people in low-lying areas were shifted to safer places, reviving memories of last year's devastating floods that drowned almost half the valley.
ये घबराहट तो है ही है, ये तो कहीं नहीं जाएगी, क्योंकि मतलब घबराहट जिस कदर जो पीछे हुआ है वो डर जो है वो बैठा हुआ है, अभी उस डर के लिए तो मतलब डर तो सामने है।
2 दिन से लगातार बारिश हो रही है। आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ मकानों की हालत बहुत खस्ता हो गई है क्योंकि 2 दिन से लगातार बारिश हो गई है और रेड अलर्ट की भी ऐलान हो चुका है।
Heavy rains triggered landslides at several places, blocking roads and highways. Some passengers had a narrow escape when a few vehicles got trapped under a landslide on the Jammu-Srinagar National Highway, resulting in its blockade. Torrential rains also wreaked havoc in Gujarat, where at least 34 people lost their lives. More than a dozen villages are reported to have been submerged. The National Disaster Response Force and the Indian Air Force have been deployed to rescue people trapped in the marooned areas. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
With that, a quick break here, but still ahead, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj announces a $1 billion assistance to Nepal for reconstruction after the earthquakes. Details ahead.
Get live Rajya Sabha session. News, views, reports and analysis you can trust on social media. Subscribe, follow, like Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, rival parties today mounted pressure on the BJP, demanding the resignations of the 4 ministers who are facing various allegations in different controversies. The BJP, however, turned down those demands. Here are the details.
The Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party on Thursday staged protests against the BJP ministers who find themselves in the midst of controversies. The Congress sharpened its attack over news reports that Rajasthan Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje allegedly gave an affidavit backing former IPL chief Lalit Modi's immigration application in the UK.
There is nothing much left to be said or much space for the BJP to keep defending its leaders. Vasundhara ji as Chief Minister cannot remain in that position because we want a thorough investigation.
राजनाथ सिंह जी जो बोले हैं कि ये यूपीए नहीं एनडीए हैं, उससे आप समझ सकते हैं कि जो आरोप हम लोग लगाते थे कि ये लोग फासिस्ट ही हैं, इनका लोकतंत्र में वो यकीन नहीं है, वो कल देश के सामने आ गया। तो मॉरली भी इनको आज एक सेकंड भी मुख्यमंत्री पद पे रहने का अधिकार नहीं रहा है। अगर थोड़ी बहुत ही नैतिकता बची हुई है तो इनको आगे आके बिना हाईकमान के आदेश के खुद को इस्तीफा देना चाहिए।
In Delhi, the Congress staged twin protests at Jantar Mantar and outside its party headquarters against External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, HRD Minister Smriti Irani and Vasundhara Raje. While Swaraj faces accusations of helping Lalit Modi, a Delhi court is due to hear a complaint against Smriti Irani over furnishing incorrect details about her educational qualifications while filing her election nomination. Scores of Aam Aadmi Party workers also staged a protest outside Irani's residence demanding her resignation.
बड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है अगर देश के शिक्षा मंत्री पर इस तरीके के आरोप लगने लगे। अगर शिक्षा मंत्री जी कहीं जानकारी गलत दे रही, क्योंकि जो आ रहा है कि 3 जगह 3 तरीके की जानकारी दी, तो फिर क्या होगा इस देश का अगर देश में जो आदर्श स्थापित करता है वही आदर्शों को तोड़ेगा।
The Congress's Delhi unit chief Ajay Makhan accused the Prime Minister of inaction while raising the issue of allegations against Pankaja Munde and accused her of playing with the health of children.
Mr. Narendra Modi should now come out and tell the nation that why is Vasundhara Raje being allowed to continue even after she is acted against national interest.
Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has defended Munde, stating that prima facie there seem to be no discrepancies in the case involving her department as alleged by the opposition. Munde, who is the Minister for Women and Child Development, is facing allegations of violating norms by clearing purchases worth 206 crore rupees without inviting tenders. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, though, is continuing with her work and met her Chinese counterpart today on the sidelines of a conference in Nepal. She raised the issue of China blocking India's move in the UN for action against Pakistan over 2611 mastermind Zakir Rahman Lakhvi's release. While China said that concerned parties should communicate first before taking such issues up at Sanctions Committee, Pakistan termed India's reaction as an attempt to politicize a technical matter.
At a time when India has expressed its displeasure at China blocking its move at the United Nations against 2611 mastermind Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, Pakistan has slammed the government's reaction. It has termed India's objection to China's move as an attempt to politicize the matter.
The statement issued by the Ministry of External Affairs of India, as well as the media reports on the matter, are most unfortunate and misleading. The overall aim of the 1267 sanctions regime is to address the threat posed by Al-Qaeda.
Days after Prime Minister Narendra Modi took up Lakhvi's release issue with the Chinese leadership, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj expressed India's concern to her Chinese counterpart. She said that Lakhvi is no ordinary terrorist to be shown any leniency and that there should be no distinction between good or bad terrorists.
She said that China's stand on this matter is at variance with the excellent progress that has been achieved in India-China bilateral relations. The Chinese Foreign Minister agreed to look into this matter and said categorically that China opposes all forms of terrorism and that there was every reason for India and China to cooperate closely together on anti-terrorism efforts.
China has assured that it opposes all forms of terrorism and that he will look into the matter. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, India has offered $1 billion help to Nepal for reconstruction after the series of massive quakes that devastated the country in April. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj announced the package, saying that India's total assistance to Nepal over the next 5 years now stands at $2 billion.
We need to recover and rebuild better and stronger. Many people are living in temporary shelters. We want to make it easier for them to leave the disaster behind and move on.
Nepal's Prime Minister Sushil Koirala urged delegates to provide aid to help the country rebuild homes after the devastating quake on April 25 that left thousands dead. During a donor conference attended by more than 60 countries and aid agencies, India offered financial assistance to reconstruction work in Nepal. Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj announced that India will offer $1 billion and that a quarter would be in the form of grants and was over and above India's existing aid pledges to Nepal.
I am happy to announce Government of India's pledge for Nepal's post-earthquake reconstruction of Nepali rupees 10,000 crores, equivalent to $1 billion US, 1/4 of it as grant. Friends, this pledge is over and above our existing bilateral developmental assistance of another $1 billion US over the next 5 years, 40% of which would be grant.
Foreign donors and agencies announced billions of dollars in aid for Nepal, but that too fell short by half of what the nation wants. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi pledged $483 million, saying it would focus on sustainable development.
Today, we may add a 10th and the most pressing area to China-Nepal cooperation. That is to help Nepal's post-quake reconstruction at our best.
The donors' conference was attended by several countries, including China, Britain, Norway, Japan, Sri Lanka, and European Union, besides the United Nations, World Bank, and Asian Development Bank. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
More international news. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has resumed talks with international creditors, with time running out to find a solution to Greece's debt crisis. A late-night session with the European Commission, the European Central Bank and the IMF failed to close the gaps. Eurozone finance ministers hope to endorse a deal when they meet again ahead of a summit of EU leaders.
Crisis talks between Greece and its creditors have resumed in Brussels in a desperate search for compromise. The latest round of technical talks comes ahead of an emergency meeting on Thursday of the 19 finance ministers of the Eurozone and a long-planned summit of all 28 EU leaders. The meeting late on Wednesday broke up after little more than an hour when it became clear both sides remained far apart on how to fix the Greek economy.
So I think that European history is full of disagreements, negotiations and then compromises. So after the comprehensive Greek proposals, I'm confident that we will reach a compromise that will help Eurozone and Greece to overcome the crisis.
For the last few weeks, the three institutions have been working together. We are coming up with a joint proposal. It's been focused and disciplined work, and unfortunately, the other side is not there yet. So, still a lot of work to do.
As a result, Greek shares were down in early trading amid fears that Tsipras will not be able to seal a deal on cash for reform in the next 48 hours. Greece has to repay 1.6 billion euros to the IMF by next Tuesday or be declared in default, potentially unleashing a bank run and capital controls followed by a slide out of the single currency area. If Greece fails to come up with a credible reform plan on Thursday, the international creditors will put their own proposals to Eurozone finance ministers for approval. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Then let's get you some more international news updates in Global Buzz. The death toll from the worst heat wave to hit Karachi for nearly 35 years has crossed over 1,200. Experts warned of a similar heat wave in the metropolis in the coming week. Falling in the beginning of the fasting month of Ramzan, the heat wave in the city of 20 million people coincided with severe electricity cuts, leaving many without water as well. The Islamic State militants staged a new attack on the Kurdish town of Kobani, which resisted a months-long siege by them. The attack involved a suicide bomber who detonated his car near the gates that separates Kobani from Turkey. 41 injured people were taken to a hospital across the border. Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev finally apologized for the pain he caused his victims before a judge sentenced him to death. Tsarnaev is the first person to be ordered a death sentence in a federal terrorism case in the US since the September 2011 attacks. South Korea today announced one more infection and 2 deaths due to MERS, bringing the total contagion cases to 180 and the death toll to 29. 7 more patients were discharged from hospitals today after fully recovering. Total discharge number has increased to 74. And finally, it's time for some sporting action. So here's Sports Beat. Former world champion Viswanathan Anand has jumped to the 2nd spot in the Norway chess tournament. Anand defeated John Ludwig Hammer of the host nation in the 8th and penultimate round. Grandmaster Anish Giri of Holland threw the tournament open for Anand as he beat Veselin Topalov in a long-drawn game. In tennis, top seeds Leandro Paes and Marcel Granollers were knocked out of the ATP Aegon Open in the quarterfinals. They went down to unseeded Chris Guccione and Andre Sa 4-6, 6-3, 7-10. The Indo-Spanish pair saved 4 match points, but Guccione and Andre converted their 5th chance to spell end for the top seeds. In the women's category, top seeds Sania Mirza and Martina Hingis stormed into the semi-finals of the WTA Aegon International Tennis Tournament today. The Indo-Swiss pair defeated Hao Qingchan of Chinese Taipei and her Italian partner Flavia Pennetta 4-6, 6-3, 10-6. They will now take on the French-Slovenian team of Caroline Garcia and Katerina Shribotnik. Former Pakistan captain Zahir Abbas has been named as the new ICC president. His name was cleared on day 3 of the Apex Cricket Body's annual conference week in Barbados. The Pakistani legend scored 34,000 plus runs in his 22-year-long career. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight from the entire team here. Good night.